Okay, now this is interesting. We're getting a compile error when we try to call this. It's not the worst thing in the world to learn. It just, it takes time, like anything. I'd say as far as game engines go, it's probably easier to learn Unreal than CryEngine or some of those. But it's probably easier to learn how to use Unity than it is to use Unreal. Okay, so landscape proxy is not actually exposed. So I can't actually go access it. Like, we have this landscape API thing right here. Alright, so let's see if there's... It's just an A actor though, so I'm kind of screwed. I have to change the landscape proxy class to actually expose its data so I can compile this and then call this method. Because I need this landscape API stuff here for me to be able to do this. So let me just double check it. See if I can actually call this. Yeah, the visual coding stuff I agree with is pretty cool. Minimal API cannot be specified when the class is fully exported using a module name API macro. Well, let's see where the landscape proxy is being, because if this is an abstract class, somebody is deriving from it. So let's see who's actually deriving from it. Alright, so it's going to be a landscape or a landscape streaming proxy, and they're both minimal API and they're not exposed. So again, alright, let's see if we can, not blueprintable, hide categories. Shit. Yeah, landscape proxy, this is a little sketchy to be editing their uClass parameters and the rest of this. I'm not sure if I want to do that. Yeah, see, it's all of a sudden just like really pissed. So we're going to see if there's some other way that we can call this thing. We're going to have to we're going to have to compile some Unreal stuff to get to this error. So we're getting right here is basically we're trying to get all actors of a specific class type here. So I'm not exactly sure what the markup stuff does for exporting the actual calls, because right now the linker is having an issue with finding the implementation of some of these functions that we want to call. And how Unreal works is you declare which functions you want to expose to different modules, and the landscape module is only exposing a certain amount of it. This is saying failed to produce because get private static class landscape proxy referenced in this function, we can't get it. See, I think the Unreal cast does a few things extra, and maybe we can just do a dynamic cast and see if it works. Because I think it's calling the get static private class function inside of their cast, which we don't have access to. No, it's still calling it. So can we do any of this? I'm not sure what you're talking about, Calvin. The U property param, you mean the U class markup on this guy? Yeah, they're not letting me mess with this thing too much, which is unfortunate. Yeah, the U class stuff here, I don't like to mess with them because they're not really set up to be easily mess withable. So let's see, I'm not super familiar with all the includes that are necessary. So they have private dependency module names, landscape is included. It may be that we need to include landscape in our project in order to actually build what we want. And this was inside of the private dependency module names. So maybe we can do it if we add this in there. So let's see if this gets super angry with us. Yeah, the markup on those things basically is what is exposed in the DLLs and modules and whatever, and has a lot to do with build systems and all sorts of shenaniganry. And I don't fully understand all that, and I'm not going to, because I don't care. Build systems are build systems. You can spend all your life messing around with stuff and making it better and more efficient or more correct. At the end of the day, it just matters if you make the frickin' product. Alright, so we can compile that in. Let's see if we can access the pointer to the thing now. Because we got the headers, that's cool. Do we have the actual linking objects? It's like there's inevitably on every big project. Yeah, there we go. We have access to the objects now. So I just wasn't including the correct things. There we go. Inevitably on any large project, there's somebody stuck doing just build stuff for their entire life, and that person is always really upset about it. It was pretty funny. On one thing, I went down to a startup in San Diego, Molten Games, and I had worked with some of the guys previously there in college, and like one of the days we like started, and we needed to like set up the build system for our game. And the obvious candidate for it was me, because I had the most experience with setting up the build system stuff and the software we were going to use for the builds, which was Jenkins. And I just turned to the guy and I was like, I'm not fucking doing this. Like, I did this last project, and I know I'm the best person to probably do this, but can we just get somebody else to do it, because I want to die. And he's like, oh, okay, I understand. And then he did the build stuff for that, and it's one of those things. I was like, man, don't make me do this. Alright, so we've made our ensure landscape grass spawned. We had to include our runtime build component stuff to do that. It's exposed to blueprints, so on begin play of our player controller, I'm going to try to call this and see if it works. Just point out overqualifications. So yeah, one of those things. It's kind of one of those, and another thing that usually happens on game projects is if you know Flash and you go from like a web game to a non-web game or something like that, and like scale form is pretty much standard for almost all projects, or at least it has been in the past. It's kind of moving to WebKit now. But it's still a problem where usually UI and stuff like that is stuff that people don't want to do. And usually there's a lot of it. Like UI is incredibly important in games. So okay, we got our bug with our grasses spawning. So there'll be an engineer who knows how to do UI or knows how to use Scaleform or Flash or something like that. And inevitably there's going to be that one meeting where somebody's like, we need help on this. Who can do it? And I was one of these people who knew these things. And every single damn project I would always get called in to help on UI, because I knew how to do UI. So there was definitely people who like they just specifically did not learn how to do that because they didn't want to get called in to do that sort of shit ever. Yeah, I had no idea how complicated a simple quote unquote inventory UI is incredibly complicated. Yeah, quote unquote, simple. especially if you have to write the whole damn thing in some sort of language that doesn't allow you to preview your changes or something, which is why for Dashkin, all of our UI is WebKit. So I can just pop open Chrome, make the UI, and then run it in the game. Shit like that. So it at least is going to be a hell of a lot easier than it could be otherwise. Because Unreal Slate stuff, I'm sorry, but I'm not okay with that. I live in a basement and a spider dropped right in front of my face. Goodbye, spider. You will not be missed. Well, I don't live in a basement. I live in a house. I own the house. I have a basement. It's cooler than the rest of the house. I work in the basement. Alright, so we want to pop up in our blueprint for our player. Let's go to our player logic object. Let's go to our initialization code. So we should go to our event graph. We've got our startup, on create, on initialize. Okay, on initialize is what we want to call here. And what we want to call is this ensure landscape grass spawned. Holy shit, you see that? Bam, we got grass immediately. None of that waiting around crap that we had before. Excellent. Them's fighting words, yeah. Them's fighting actions. Alright, so I'm gonna quickly make a response to this dude here. So let's actually take a little bit more of a look as to this landscape proxy stuff. Alright, so where is... Alright. So I'm going to respond to this thing. This is for anyone who is still having trouble with this. The grass, the grass is created on a per, what is it created on a per subcomponent is on a per landscape actor basis. Yeah, I'll start this off with short answer. You need to call update grass with the force sync equals true to make all the grass get created at once. Alright. Long answer. On the landscape proxy actor, this is not available from blueprints. We're going to need to import that landscape module and do it in C++. Long answer. The grass is created on a per landscape actor basis, and each frame the grass actor queues up a certain number of subcomponents to have their meshes generated at runtime. The number that it can create is 4. The number of tasks it can queue each frame is 4, but regardless, it only pops one async task off its finished queue each frame. Basically, the larger your landscape in terms of components, the more frames it'll take to render, regardless of how dense the foliage is on the landscape. For Unreal to fix this, they need to, and I'll give some line number references. To understand this, go check out landscape grass.cpp in the update grass method. You'll find that if bForce sync is set to true, that it'll make sure to queue up all tasks and wait for them to drain. Otherwise, in the queuing logic, it checks the what async foliage tasks. Right against the async task counter. Logic, and at the very bottom of the function, it pulls tasks off and has a nice little comment about how one per frame is fine. I'm on version 4.16, and this fixed it for my game. And before I finish playing on the first frame, I make sure that I call this method and all my grass instantly spawns in. So I should probably edit this. It's there we go. That's better. Short answer, long answer. Alright, so we'll get our inbox showered with praise from people calling me an absolute genius. Probably never. But yeah, that's the stuff that's screwing it up. It's just kind of funny. Like, it's like when the SSL bug stuff that I threw on there, the I tracked down the guy on LinkedIn who actually wrote it. I was shaking my fist at the screen. I was like, I know who you are, you bastard. If if I boot up Unreal Tournament and then all my shit gets stolen, like my password gets stolen, I'm gonna know who it was. So also remember that if you're contributing to open source projects. If you write something stupid, somebody's gonna find you. And you'll be in a coffee shop one day, and this guy will come up to you and he'll be like, "Hey, you. Yeah, are you ambientenergy101? Yeah, you know what? Fuck you, buddy. Fuck you." And then just walks off. And you're gonna wonder like, what the hell is that guy's problem? Because it's probably somebody really passive aggressive like me. And let's just go ahead and make sure that that works with a package build, because it shouldn't take too long to create a package build for us. So let's remove Visual Studio from our editor and then go ahead and build this thing. Ugh. This project makes me want to relook at Paper 2D again. Well, what do you mean relook at? Like, you want to see if you can use it? Or... because we're using Paper 2D, but I have modified it heavily. Like, I went in there, I added support for collision objects, subcomponents that are like multiple types. So you can have a hitbox, you can have like a hitbox for the head, a hitbox for the fist, a physics box for the body. The per frame collision stuff working properly as well. Callbacks for if it can play stuff. I added the animation events in there, so animation events like start and end, and you can have an events on per frame basis. I added a whole bunch of import scripts. Otherwise, this stuff would just be impossible. You wouldn't be able to do it. So if you want to relook at Paper 2D, it's got some pretty big limitations. A top-down RPG. Well, RPGs are really hard to make in terms of just content. So I would advise not that, but I don't see why Paper 2D wouldn't work for that. It could do that. Like, you don't need crazy complex stuff for an RPG for collision. So like, the more stuff I was working with for collision was, if we wanted to have very specific action game sort of stuff, or fighter game where like, you actually have a fist box that hits against somebody's head to do extra damage or whatever. So we'll cook our assets, do all that. And the editor cannot run a shipping build because the editor has so many other checks and everything else. It can't run it. So if you want to test a full release build, you got to build shipping. And it's a good idea to do that. Normals are supported with basic Paper 2D stuff. That totally will work. The only issue there is we just have so many frames in our animations that if we had to hook everything up by hand, it's like game over. So boom, there's our grass spawned. No problem on the first frame. Alright, Bitey. Fly! No. All right. So I think we're pretty good on. We're pretty well off for this scene so far. I mean, we're trying to get here, and we're obviously very far away from that. So the question is, what should we do? I'm going to be back in just a second. So I think the next thing to add is going to be the sky. And I'm actually going to see if Adam's still on, because I wanted to tell him about that stuff. So the next thing I think is going to be the sky. I mean, we could mess around with the foliage stuff real quick and change the grass density. Why don't we just do that real quick and see what it looks like? So I'm just talking to Adam real quick. As to say, found a new thing, and he's like, "Oh, can I check it out?" I'm like, well, all right. Well, he says he's interested, so I'll go ahead and check that in there. So we're gonna do this. So ing grass work on grasslands test level, etc. So I'll check that in real quick. Alright, well, if you're watching, Adam, I went ahead and submitted that stuff and rechecked out the files. But a quick rundown, basically, for the foliage. So what I've done is, instead of having the foliage be, like in the foliage system, what you do is you paint the thing on here. So basically, for the material on the landscape, if I go to test content landscape, I've got this. This is the material for it. So you can see I've got the two texture samples. One is just brown texture, which you put in here for ground tiles, and the other one is your reedy grass texture. And basically, there's a grass sample, grass thing, and a layer blend. And really what it's doing is there are multiple layers on the expected inside of the landscape, and this layer blend will let us blend the layers together. So this one expects a dirt layer and a grass layer to be present on the landscape. And for grass down here, this is just saying sample the grass object and apply it to the grass layer. The grass object here is I hook up the test grass stuff. The test grass just uses your mesh, and then you pick your density in here. And this is familiar. Like the foliage system is very similar to how this is, where you pick your min and max and all that. So once you're done with that, you pick your density. You go back to your landscape and you go to your paint layers, and you have to make sure that these layers are in here and that they're added, that the layer info is added to the level. It's pretty simple. Just add a layer, hit the plus button, and then what you do is you select what you want to paint. So let's just say I wanted to paint dirt on here. I just paint dirt, and it's dirt and the grass is gone, right? Just like that. And if I want the grass back, I just paint grass. So, you basically define like what a terrain should. Yeah, it's a lot simpler. You define basically what you want your terrain to be, and then you can just paint it right on there, and just boom, right? Like that's what we want, is just that sort of stuff, because this level file isn't saving all these like little instances of grass everywhere. It's only saving that this texture at this texture coordinate has, it's 50% dirt, 10% grass, 35% unknown, or whatever. It's like, so you can do that sort of thing. So you can make like a little sick area or whatever the hell. Anyway. Oh yeah, you can add as many layers as you want. You just have to make those layers as well inside the material and stuff like that, so the material knows to expect them and everything like that. So, like for instance, let's say I want to make this all grass again, but one of the things is I want the grass to be less dense. So one way you could do that is make things half dirt, or if you're like, well, I just want the grass area when it's pure grass to have higher density. Well, all you do is you don't have to be inside of anything for this. You just go to your grass asset and just say, well, grass density should be 10. And then it'll fill it all out there. And there you go. Notice the level didn't take 2 million years to load or anything else like that. It's just, there you go, grass. And you can change all the quality settings and everything else you want. I also had to go and fix the loading code and submitted some responses to Unreal, because this stuff was broken. Like, you saw that this little loading thing here. That happens in the game too. So if I hit play, you see it all happen. You know, it'll go shing 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 shing. Let's just say I fixed that. So you missed about an hour of me hunting through the Unreal source chunk. Yeah. You missed an hour of me hunting through like the documentation, finding it was all broken, hunting through the forums, finding it's been broken for years, and then hunting through the source code and being like, the hell with this shit, I'm gonna make this work anyway, and then making it work anyway. So we have something nobody else has. Yet again. So anyway, that's what we got with grass, and so you'll be able to play around with that. Problem solved only in Dashkin. Yeah, well, it's up to Unreal to fix their own shit. It basically had to do with the size of all the map stuff. They weren't updating everything properly. So, what are we doing next? I think I closed my picture. I should not have closed my picture. Your question is two-part, right? Like, if you want to change the grass to curly grass, then you just swap out the mesh inside of here. Alright, I changed it to a fucking forest instead of grass. Alright, so we have like the bladey grass instead of the other grass. So this is totally separate grass type, right? So let's say we have bladey grass, right? So I'll save that in there. So if I wanted more stuff, right? Like I want the landscape to have not only this type of grass, but I want another type of grass. Then we have to go to our test content. We need to add another type of grass. So I'm going to duplicate this. It's going to be test grass 2. So test grass 2, we're going to need curly grass. And we'll put it as like a density of 5 or something. And inside of our material, so there's two different ways. If we want to have another layer, which specifically has like, you know, I want to be able to paint the flower layer or something, then you add a new layer to the landscape. But if you're saying like I want extra types of grass to show up in the grass region, you go to this grass sample here and you add a new element to this, and we're going to call this grass 2. And we're going to sample grass 2 in here. And what we have to do is we now have to basically, we need to hook up grass to that thing. So, how do we do that? I'm not really sure how we do that. So we're going to sample grass. Ah yeah, here it is. Test grass, we want test grass 2. we've got the texture, and this texture is the base texture on the ground, I think. And this sample down here is the type of instances of stuff that's in there. So let's see if our new grass is showing up. And I'm not sure why the other grass isn't showing up yet, but because I'm trying to mess with this. Let's see if I... Yeah, the second type of grass isn't showing up. Why would that be? Because if we change this out, obviously we get tons more grass. So this one needs to have more stuff. We have all the rotations and everything else. It's going to be something with the material? There we are. So now you can see we've got this mix of different types of grass in here. So if we want an equal blend here, it's actually putting them right on top of each other, isn't it? So we're going to sample grass, and we're going to make grass and grass 2. Alright, let's go to our painting and see if there's anything in this. So there's a layer blend, and then there's sample grass. Alright, so that one's at 10. And yeah, I'm not sure about all the different things here. So this is the test grass, and let's see if it's controlled. Like, it gets controlled properly here if it's the only one. No, it's getting applied properly of what it looks like. Alright, so it's just if you have similar densities in the grass. If you have similar densities in the grass, then they might show up on top of each other. So it's just me. That's just me being wrong. Now, are those different? Like, that's reedy grass and blady grass, and I guess they look very similar. So we can kind of mess around with stuff like that. If you add a second mesh into test grass. Test grass does not have a second mesh thing. We have a grass variety though. So it's not a mesh, it's a, if we add a second grass variety is what you're talking about. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll do 4 and 4. Actually, 2 and 4. And what we'll do is we'll remove this here. I like how I cannot actually delete an array. That's so dumb.